This is the silent room.
Yeah. Did that go back out yet?
That's pretty
All right, I'm going to work on the Zoom issue, but in the meantime, Wesley Williams, who is a PE and Vice President of Quality Systems, is going to talk to you guys.
Hopefully we'll keep it in the frame enough on our presentation that we can see everything. I want to thank the city and the county and all the organizers here today, Stormwater. We're very happy to be in this session. We think it's great to be in the session with the arborist for the city. I think what he's doing ties in really well with the focus of our company. Like she mentioned, I'm with NESOC, or the National Environmental Stewardship Company. And I'm going to start off by giving a little bit of background about who we are, and then we'll move on to talking about natural conservation easements. And I'll turn it over to the Chief Technical Officer, Scott Williams, and he can discuss more of the technical side, probably what most engineers are more interested in hearing. So we kind of like to start off with, making a statement about who we are as a company. This is just a philosophical statement from Chief Seattle. What befalls the earth befalls all the sons of the earth. That's kind of some of our core philosophy. You reap what you sow at the end of the day. So I'm going to give an introduction to NESOC. At NESOC, we really view Earth as our primary client. I think that's an interesting viewpoint for a company. So you start thinking, okay, who is this client? We basically include all things living, non-living, basically the natural environment. How can we focus? What are this client's needs? We see this needs as a sustainable cohabitation. We have this existence here. We need to learn how to share it properly. Some things have a voice, some things don't have a voice. We need to understand how we can build systems that give fairness to all constituents. And we kind of view our joint future is our commitment as a company. If we aren't planning for it now, who will? So it kind of gives you a different perspective when you back out and view it from space. A lot of our astronauts come back. They all have spiritual moments when they get out in a way and see this precious blue ball floating out in the black space, the expanses. This is it. This is what we got. And I'm not sure we'll ever be able to afford to fly to Mars and try to populate it. So we gotta learn how to live with what we got. So what do we mean by sustainable cohabitation? There are certain natural cycles to the way the world works and the way living and non-living things move within this system. And when certain things get out of control, it's just like cancer in your body. When a cancer grows out of control, it's on a different cycle than what your normal organism is meant to live. So trying to come in and temper these cycles, who's doing that? We view NESOC's role in this as kind of playing like a referee in this game. It's not fun to play a game when there's no rules and there's nobody keeping score, or if it's a one-sided blowout like the national championship. It's not exactly fun to watch or play in very one-sided games. And we as humans have processed through the levels of this game to where we basically can dictate a lot of what goes on in our natural world. It's not just surviving anymore. We're beyond surviving. So we have to think about that. Surviving on a larger scale, more than just us as humans, but as the earth as a whole. So it's a holistic thinking. Our company looks from the 30,000-foot view to try to help ensure that everyone, all these constituents in this whole thing as Earth have a fair and equal voice. And we think at the end of the day, I think it's very important here at these kind of talks and conferences, you have to make environmentalism economical. I think environmentalism's gotten a very bad rap historically. People have been trying to get their message out and trying to shock people into being more conscious or conscientious. So it's given a lot of people a bad rap. I mean, it almost made me laugh hearing the arborist he's almost sounded like an engineer talking about parameters and meeting goals. And he's more engineering than me, the engineer, talking today. So, you have a new generation coming through, young guys like this, young guys like me, a lot of young people younger than me that are going to start this grassroots effort that have a different view of the world than what it used to be. We're going towards a new paradigm, and I think the mayor spoke about that as well. It's a new world that we're going into. The regulations are new, how we view the world, how we view development, all that is a different world. And I think the only way we can make a lot of these things happen is by keeping them economical. So that's our primary goal. I'm an engineer. I can figure out how to make things better, cheaper. Why not do it in this realm? So coming back to some of our main services, we're focusing on environmental management. I think importantly on this level, we're doing overseeing BMPs, overseeing water quality, and other types of easements. The conservation easement, I think that's an important need that we've seen having dealt with a lot of projects. The regulations state that you have to have certified third parties take easement controls over conservation areas. That's what we're doing. There's nobody that's out there wanting to take this responsibility on. We want to take it on as a company. So that's one of our primary focuses. I think in order to do this properly, you have to have the modern way of thinking about doing these kind of things, and that involves quality systems. If you're going to be involved with the EPA or the government, you have to have strict quality systems. You have to follow a certain protocol. You have to develop practices. You have to develop a standard that you're trying to meet. And we are developing this standard as the regulations are being developed too, to make sure we as a company meet this standard, meet a high standard, meet and exceed the regulations, and make sure that the projects that we're involved with meet and exceed these regulations. So kind of overall, we say our future is our commitment. It's a joint future, and we think the way to do that is to make these environmental solutions that work for your business and are good for the natural world. And at the end of the day, that feels good. We're doing what feels good at the end of the day. So I think that's kind of the big picture of NESOC and some of our core principles. I want to pass it on to Scott Williams. He's going to talk more about the technical side. I think that's probably more interesting to a lot of the engineers here. And then I'll come back and wrap up.
Thank you, Wes. I appreciate it. I am Scott Williams, the Chief Technical Officer for NESOC, and I also want to thank Casey for sharing time with us on this presentation. I think we fit together quite well in what we're trying to achieve here. We're going to get into a few technical aspects of water quality and conservation. We've identified 5 areas to focus on here: the water quality and volume, site design practices, water quality volume credits, implementation, and practicality. In the regulatory environment, we've talked a little, you may have heard in some of the prior talks that the complicated regulatory environment includes mostly guidelines from the Clean Water Act that have been passed down through the EPA, through TDEC, and now through local jurisdictions. They come in the form of the NPDES MS4, phase 2 permit or phase 1, depending on the jurisdiction, and the TMDL program. That's the total maximum daily load program. Both of which are guidelines that the local jurisdictions use to set up their local stormwater and stormwater quality practices. These can be daunting tasks for local regulators, and we can step in and help at that point. We can also look to typically the larger municipalities, which have already gone through some of this, like Nashville, who seem to be doing a very good job, and other ones. I think Knox County's done an excellent job, the city of Knoxville, Chattanooga, and several others. Don't really want to go in too deep into the legislation on that, because it can take hours of time, and that's really not what I wanted to touch on here. But we do want to learn how to use the new rules, not only so that we can help our developer friends, but also so that we can ensure that we can do these things in economically and ecologically sensitive areas. The water quality volume is a volume that must be calculated for each individual project. The calculated volume is estimated to allow for treatment of stormwater runoff for 85% of average annual rainfall events. Currently, regulations also require that an 80% load reduction goal for total suspended solids is achieved. Therefore, there are two critical parts to water quality: a volume of water to treat and a level of treatment for that water. Next, we can look to the site design practices to identify ways to comply with these water quality regulations. We can manage stormwater close to the point of origin to minimize the need for expensive collection and conveyance systems. We can prevent stormwater impacts rather than mitigating them, which is expensive. We can utilize simple, non-structural, low-maintenance management solutions. Some of you may be familiar with this chart. It shows up in about every BMP manual that I've seen. Not sure who exactly put it together, but it's a pretty good use for design when you're doing your total suspended solid loads. In the chart, we can see a list of total suspended solid removal rates for typical structural BMPs. As we search through this chart, we can note two primary findings. One, the old dry detention pond just doesn't get any respect anymore. Two, none of the structural BMPs can match the 100% TSS removal rate that you get with the natural conservation area. I think this makes it obvious that you should take exhaustive efforts in design to use as many non-structural BMPs, both from an economical and a regulatory point of view. Other good site design practices include use of multifunctional landscapes and hydrology-based designs. Reduction of adverse stormwater runoff impacts through the use of better site design should be the first consideration of the design engineer and really the municipality too. What can we achieve from these non-structural BMPs? Let's look at the water quality volume credits. Water quality volume credit number 1 is the natural area preservation through conservation easement. To calculate the benefits of this credit, subtract preserved natural areas from the total site area when computing the water quality volume. This simple calculation alone shows an important dramatic decrease in water quality volume, which translates to smaller detention facilities and minimization of structural BMPs. However, with this, and only this particular credit, the full natural area acreage qualifies for 100% total suspended solid reduction value. Reduction can allow for everything from dramatic decreases in treatment costs to merely making a project economically feasible. Let's take this case study as an example. A proposed apartment site of 28 acres was made up of grassland and woodland. The proposed project area was to be 13.8 acres. Preserved natural area is 7 acres. This is an actual site that I worked on in Johnson City and is pretty much completed now. if you look on the screen, without reduction, the water quality volume is 1.13 acre feet. With the reduction, it is 0.85 acre feet. The preserved natural area reduction resulted in a 25% reduction in the water quality volume required for the site. If you're familiar with this calculation, you know exactly what that means. However, if not, I'll enlighten you a little bit here. The area will also receive a 100% total suspended solids removal value in the TSS calculation. This means you may not need any other water quality treatment to achieve the 80% TSS removal requirement. Plus, since a retention facility takes up valuable space, a 25% volume reduction saves area and construction costs. Together, on this particular project, a final cost savings of $50,000 can be expected by not having to use a proprietary water quality device alone. Plus, the pond was essentially converted to an extended release dry detention pond, avoiding expensive future maintenance of a wet pond and water quality device. The estimated immediate savings are $75,000 to $100,000, and over a 20-year period, $100,000 to $150,000, not to mention the possibility of fines and other things if the water quality features happen to fail on you. Also, there is a second water quality volume credit. It's the managed area preservation. This credit's not quite as beneficial due to the lack of TSS reduction, but still worth looking into. At NESOC, we prefer the use of reforestation, which is allowed under the Credit 1 Natural Area Preservation. This is where guys like Casey step in to tell us what we should plant back in these natural forestation areas so that they can have the best chances for a good lifespan. There's also other water quality credits available, but they're not the scope of this particular discussion. All right, implementation criteria. On how these best management practices are implemented, these points are taken straight from the Water Quality B&P Manual. Each item represents a legal obligation. Some of these obligations can be met through use of the maintenance agreement with the regulating jurisdiction. However, full compliance for some B&Ps, like the natural conservation area, can only be achieved through the use of a third party to hold the easement, similar to what my colleague Wes was talking about. The purpose of the third party is merely to hold and provide monitoring and oversight to ensure the perpetual protection of the area in accordance with the requirements of a conservation or preservation area. This is where NESOC can provide services to ensure proper implementation and maintenance of these and other water quality benefits. As you can see, this is a typical sign marking a natural conservation area that we might find on one of our specific sites. How practical are non-structural B&Ps like the conservation area? Well, when it comes to practicality, they only require 10,000 square feet to count. That means we can have pods of these things. We don't have to have a mass woodland. As long as we can pull out 10,000 square feet to possibly save, we can use that. The trees are already there and in place in most cases. If not, we can do reforestation, so it's a low cost to implement if the trees are there. They, as Casey touched on, they add extreme value in some cases to the overall development because you have mature trees there which take a lot of time to grow back. They are virtually totally inexpensive to maintain. They protect our sensitive forest, streams, wetlands, and habitats, and they're easily obtainable with their help prior to or during design. I say prior to emphasize because we want to really get in on the front end of projects to help, because if you don't do some planning up front, you may be too late by the time you've got to the design phase and the approval phase. So these are ways that our company, NESOC, can help you with the technical guidance and other issues. We can provide free guidance for reduction in project costs to ensure regulatory compliance. That's where we get with the engineers, the developers, the municipalities up front, discuss our options. What are the things we can do? Do we have some natural woodlands? Do we have places we can reforest? different things like this that can look at the water quality and the benefits we can get out of the natural earth as it has provided already. We can also provide third party for required easements along with all the legal documentation pre-approved for streamlined approvals and bond releases. As you know, all of this stuff takes time. So once you go through the process once or twice in each jurisdiction, which we've gone through with several now, we can easily go back through because they have familiarity with their documents and they're able to look at us and say, okay, they've got exactly what we need because we've tweaked them in the past. We can also provide required monitoring and oversight, ensuring full regulatory compliance, and we can provide the whole spectrum of environmental stewardship and planning services. In all, we feel it's a win-win-win situation. We have human development can continue to grow and do more economically and conscientiously. Like Wes said, at the end of the day, you want to feel good about what you do. I find even developers are that way. We all frame them as possibly being money hungry and out for that, but a lot of them nowadays are changing their mindsets, and they do want to leave something behind that they know that people will feel good about. Maybe change their reputations just a little bit. Together we can create balanced, sustainable cohabitations, making more enjoyable and natural environments for all of Earth's constituents, and future generations will benefit from our foresight and restraint. And as a father, I do have a 9-year-old daughter, and you know, it changes your mindset when you do have children. So I would like to leave the Earth with maybe a little bit better than I found it. And finally, little catchphrase, we like to say helping projects stay green without going into the red, because in the end, we have to be able to do all these things economically or no one's going to do them. So the free market has to have the ability to absorb and be able to do these things. And so that's pretty much what we think of, and our future is their commitment that goes right along with their ideals. Casey, if you'd step back up here, any questions you have towards Casey or myself, we would love to take right now. Yes, sir.
You were mentioning that you could set aside areas as small as, what, 1/4 of an acre, 10,000 square feet, whatever
Yes.
the heck that is. What about the problem that you see on a lot of construction sites where they leave the trees and whatnot, but by the time the guy with the bulldozer and the backhoe's done, they've nicked the bark, they've compacted the roots and all that stuff, so you don't know what you have left, or is it going to die in a year or two? How do you deal with that?
This is an excellent point, and that is why we are so stringent on needing to be upfront with the project and the planning. We actually want to prevent this from happening by using means such as the easements that would go on a natural conservation area.
Yeah, but a bulldozer operator
needs to be.
A can of beer in his lap.
Oh, I agree. Well, I'll get to the physical. I'll get to the physical restraint in a second, because it will require it. I agree. We'll put easement on it, and we'll put signs up. However, and we'll record those easements early on in the project on purpose. That way, we've got a remedy legally. However, I think the best thing you can do is kind of the usage in my practice. Uses of tree fencing well outside the perimeter of what you're trying to save is the only way. The other thing is you have to be educated by a man like this to tell you on certain trees we know that we can, the root system travels out a whole lot further on some trees and a whole lot less on some.
Don't give out too much.
Oh, okay. I don't want to get so, but with that,
I will touch on quite a bit of that tomorrow.
With that, you can get.
What is it, like 25 feet from the trunk? Is it the crown? I mean, what are you talking about?
It varies on every.
Almost 3 times the size of the crown to 5 times.
Really?
And so those things need to be taken into account. I mean, it's an excellent question, because you're exactly right. The bulldozer driver, he just sees dirt to move in front of him.
Well, he's probably bid it low and has to get it done and get out of
That's
it.
exactly right. Yes.
You had talked about how you could set aside an easement and it would wash the 80% TSS requirement. Is that correct?
Well, a natural conservation area per the water quality B&P manuals actually gives you a 100% reduction for that specific area. Plus, you get to subtract that area out of your computation for water quality on it. As we showed at the chart up there, all the rest of the BMPs just don't give you the same total suspended solids. So you're trying to get to 80% for your full site. So if you can set aside a certain acreage of 100% land, that allows the 0% land to be offset to some extent. And you know, a lot of times in East Tennessee, we have odd drainage basins on sites. You may have 3 or 4 of them. You may not be able to practically get all of your drainage to one specific area where you can treat it. You may have to have 4 or 5 systems. This is where a natural conservation area can come in very handy if you have the ability to preserve that, because it can offset the need in other places. In Johnson City, they actually allowed us to have a conservation area in one drainage basin on a site and an area on another part of the drainage basin, which was, it was not in the same drainage basin on the site specifically. However, they combined downstream on down the road about a mile. They allowed us to offset the lack of controls up there on the main road. It's the front entrance for the place. And to do the controls for that was going to be very expensive, just to treat a little half-acre section of land where we were putting in road. But because we preserved so much land on the back side of that property and got the 100% credit on the total calculation for the whole property, we got out of having to do controls up front.
So it's cubic foot then?
On
As far as, I think in your example, you had like a 20 or 13 acres of impervious, and then 7 acres of an easement was established.
Yes.
And that actually, the entire site was, we were able to mitigate the 80% requirement.
We were able to mitigate the 80% requirement with the usage of a regular water quality pond on that thing, an extended release dry detention pond, which gave us 60%, I believe, on that project for it, and we were able to offset the 60 to the 80 with the 100% factor on the rest of it. We were able to offset that. So yes, if not, we would have had gone to something that got us more. If we couldn't have offset it totally with the forestation, we would have gone to a different water quality control device. You know, take your pick. Structural one typically is what you have to go with, or do a little different. This was an apartment complex, very hard to do green on site, with the exception of just a few islands and different things. So we're limited. But yes, that's the gist of how we offset on that one. Any more questions? How about one for the arborist? Break him in. All right. I want to thank everybody for coming.
I think after